we'll go ahead and call the Finance Committee meeting to order. And you would be kind enough for the roll call.
Sure. Alderman Pecorelli.
Here.
Alderwoman Day. Here. Alderman Craig.
Here.
Dennis Cheeky.
Here.
Mohammed Noman.
Here.
John K. Ford absent and Mira absent.
All right. Do I need to pledge allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Number 2 on our agenda is citizen comment period. As I don't see anybody in the audience or lined up to get in the door, we'll go ahead and close that and move on to item number 3, which is approval of minutes dated November 26, 2024, which are included in your packets on the back of the agenda, at least in my copy. So if you've had a chance to look at those, any comments? Otherwise, normally we take a motion to approve.
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second on the minutes dated November 26, 2024. Any further discussion on those same? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to item 4. In your packets also, and Danielle wants to share some comments with us, are the monthly financial packages that include the information for both October and November year-to-date 2020. Danielle, go ahead.
Okay, so in your packet is October and November's financials. We are not done with year-end for December yet, so those will be coming next month. It's obviously detailed in your memo here. I did want to add a couple of things, though, that we can touch on, and then I'll answer any questions. Cash and investments, those are running smooth. Property tax payments have all been paid now and settled. Again, still dealing with institutional capital management. That is just something I need to work on getting moved over to ADM for that higher interest rate. We have $52.9 million in governmental funds, which has decreased from $54 million in October. Essentially, all of the state aid and property taxes have been paid through November. There's not much income coming in.
Make a note that John is.
There's not much revenue coming in December except your normal license permits, court fees, but all of our aids have already been accounted for. Landfill siting revenues, those are up 19.4% from what was projected for the budget. It looks like we might end at roughly a little over $3 million. So you can see on the chart here, I just wanted to note that as the budget's slightly increased over the last couple of years, our actual has dramatically increased for most of the quarters. And so that monthly rolling average is higher than expected. In the general fund, we have $30.6 million, which is about $875,000 higher than the budget. So again, like I stated, tax collections are complete. All of our shared revenue and state aids have come in. The only revenue that we are waiting on is the cable and franchise fee, which we usually get in January and then book back. And then the final water utility pilot payment. You will see that our license and permits have gone down. And the public charges for services have gone up. So, looking at what we're charging to our residents and other municipalities for those public charges and intergovernmental charges, are higher than what we're bringing in on our licensing permits. That's also something to look into for the future. The big jump in public charges for services, though, I did point out here is due to the public safety and public works revenue. I know that The Rock used our public safety department significantly in 2024 compared to previous years. However, I would not consider that a recurring revenue, but that is something that I assume we continue to experience challenges in TID 5. We may see that number rise or stagnant over the next couple of years. General transportation aids ran pretty smooth compared to the budget. Building permits started off strong, but they declined in the last quarter. We still have roughly 18% of the budget remaining. Our fines and forfeitures, I believe, court fines have increased slightly individually, so you can see that we're already at $434,000 and we only budgeted $400,000, so we're at 108% collection.
For building permits, does that normally trail off at the end of the year? Is that like a normal thing?
No, I think
Usually pretty steady.
Yeah, and what I would say we anticipated for the 24 and 20, I shouldn't say I was in 23 budget, but from my understanding for the 23 budget and then for the 24 budget, we did have some large projects that we expected were going to be taking permits out in 2024 that just haven't been delayed.
Yep.
So. We're at 101% collection for ambulance billing, and then I did note in here, but it was approved in 2025 for an ambulance fee increase, so you will see that we did budget a little bit extra in 2025 for that projected increase. Engineering fees are steady at budget. Investment income is $205,000 over budget, but I did note that obviously market rates are starting to go down. We're at 111%. Year-to-date expenditures, we're at $26.9 million, which is $1.2 million underspent. I did note that some departments have vacancies or they have unspent non-personnel services. I know I don't break that out individually in the general fund summary, so if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to try and break that down a little bit more. Auditing services, we did contract with CLA to provide some additional reconciliation services. They are still working through that, and I plan to bring an update on the way the audit is going this year so far at the next meeting. Overtime for police and fire increased. I believe both of them are over budget already through November. I don't know if Kelly wants to speak on any of the changes in the departments that we've had budgetary-wise. I know that we've done some internal, or made some internal changes for a few of the departments that will potentially allow us some expenditure savings in 2025.
Inspection
Yeah.
and engineering. Sure. So inspection services, the director had approached me. We have had trouble hiring his replacement, a plumbing inspector. We actually had somebody hired who lasted, I believe, like a day. Yeah. And so
they left or
he left. Yeah, and it I don't know. Everything around it, from what I heard, was just kind of odd. But the short and long of it is that it's very difficult to find a plumbing inspector. We've been looking for over a year. And so Justin, he's the director of the department, had proposed a kind of a unique way of adjusting and moving forward, which included the buy-in of his entire department to support this path forward. The path forward is that everybody would get a pay increase to account for the additional work that they were doing. and that they had committed to moving forward and not continue to try to hire for this position because we just could not meet the comparables that were out there from a pay standpoint, but also there are a number of municipalities trying to go for the same small pool of qualified people. So actually, that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about as well. But so we worked out a pay structure and increase over this year and last year and this year of who would end up getting pay increase, what that would look like. And so far, I believe it's running good. And so that's kind of a way that they had thought outside of the box, got everybody's buy-in, and I think that they run very well. They run lean as a department as it is. And I think it's really kind of addressing the issues with resources that we have the best way we can.
Are they having to do overtime hours then to fit this all in, I guess?
Not standardly, no. Not that I've seen.
I think it's also if they've already been doing for the last year and a half the additional duties without having a plumbing inspector, because Justin is certified to do that job, so he's continuing to be the plumbing inspector / director, and then the admin staff and the other inspection staff have continued to do the permitting and duties of that, but are just now being compensated. But I think we determined it was like $1,000.
Yeah,
with benefits and everything for the 25 budget, but it's not hiring.
Is there any additional training that anybody needs?
No.
It didn't.
And like I said, they had all bought into it already. I think it was more of a, hey, we're doing this, but now we're going to push to be compensating, kind of make this a thing, right? And I think it's been successful. His department's actually running with a process, I guess a process project, if you will, right? Where do applicants start and where do they end? How do they get there? And we're working with various departments to determine what that looks like. Ironically, 5 months ago, I had created my own little narrow scope of what does this look like. For example, I took planning's different applications, site plan changes, zoning, what have you. And I tried to create what I hope will be some form of it at least utilized moving forward, but a checklist of sorts, you know, for the person that's applying for permits and what have you. Something that was very simple for them to follow, even with boxes where you can mark off when you did each step. And then also a place for the planning contact information and also the expected timeline. So I'm thinking that I had provided that to Justin today. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make that meeting, the first one that they had, but I will be making the next one. But when I had showed him it, he's like, this is perfect. This is kind of what we're looking for. And then we want to work to determine where the handoffs are. What's the workflow? Because we don't have anything in writing and every department does something differently. I want to put pen to paper, determine what those processes are, make it easy for the end user, which is obviously the applicants, and also in doing that, define what the pain points are. So that way, once they're addressed, we can talk about how to, not address, but once they're identified, we can talk about how to address them.
There is, when I worked at OSA shortly before I left, they were able to get the department heads together to come up with a process, much like you're describing, all online, that allows the person that is the applicant for whatever to come in, they enter the portal, and then it's not paper routing around it, it goes where it needs to go. The the applicant gets like a real-time thing kicked back to them saying, okay, it passed here, now it's going here, this is who has it, and then it keeps going. So I know they still use it. They went through a whole like Six Sigma like QI process with it to make sure it works. So it might be worth, I mean, I don't know how well you know Jim Archambault, but it might be worth reaching out just you know how they started, because I've always, when I was the health officer here, I wanted to try to get something like that in place, because it just seemed like the processes we have there's so many like sticking points, and it just doesn't flow the way that it should.
Right.
And it's frustrating internally, but I can't imagine externally how frustrating it is too. So
and that's kind of where we're at too. Was for me anyway, one of our residents that have had an experience with planning kind of was the catalyst for trying to put together some checklists, and talking with them and taking what we have from online and looking at it, it was just not specific enough. It wasn't just simple information of what are my steps. And I know that from the end user standpoint, it's extremely frustrating. And then we have this bad reputation. I want to try to fix that reputation. And so I'm really happy to get Amy's support from inspection services, and it sounds like everybody's excited about kind of identifying where we can make these processes, and not even just the processes, but understanding what they are. You know, if this, then this, and so on. So we're working on that internally. And you said that was at TOSA, right?
yeah.
I wonder if it's part of their website provider.
So they used to use CivMec. They bumped to a different group to run a better back end. CivMec was not great on the back end, but I mean, Archambault, I know some of the other department heads have turned over, but Archambault's been there the whole time. So.
And then the other one would be engineering. So with the city engineer and the assistant engineer, as well as one of our 4 technicians with their exit, I also had, once again, 2 of the technicians approach me with the idea that we're going to pick up the extra work. We're going to gain knowledge and insight and skill sets that are above where we are right now. So they had committed to essentially filling that 4th position, sharing the work between the 2 of them. And since then, we had one of the longtime technicians give us his retirement plan. So he'll be leaving July 11th after 27 years plus with the city. And that's also another thing we need to talk about, because I want to be able to look for somebody to backfill, not necessarily his position, but one of the other technicians where, you know, it's the entry level, and start working on a very strong training plan for the technician that is leaving, so that way he can transfer his knowledge over to the 2 that are remaining.
Okay.
The moral of that explanation is we're trying to find ways, knowing that the last few years we've been really lucky to have that interest income coming in, get the supplemental aid from the state, but knowing that at some point those are, at least the interest income is not recurring. So finding ways that we can cut costs without having severe budget demands and concerns is something that we need to do. So those 2 things have really helped that. So you'll see that we do have a surplus going into December. We'll see what the year looks like next month. Debt service payments, that's in and out. We made those payments March and September. TIF districts, nothing has significantly changed in any of the districts. All of them have received their tax increment. All of them have paid the debt service payments. We haven't entered into any new development agreements through November. TID 9 does not have any increment coming in until 2026, so we will keep the interfund advance on the books for a few years to get that increment generated. On the American Rescue Plan, nothing really going on there except some future transfers to cover the cost now that we have all the projects designated. The Solid Waste Fund, tippage is up a little bit, over $50,000 compared to the budget. I did put in here just for some of the people who are on the committee that haven't been around that long, but just the main resources coming into the Solid Waste Fund are tippage, user fees, and then we get an annual recycling grant from the DNR. That recycling grant comes in roughly around May, and it has been pretty stagnant at about $69,000 for many years now. Also, we do charge the users a solid waste fee on their tax bill. However, if you come in as a new resident and you, just explaining the process, when you come in as a new resident, new construction. If you're in a home that's constructed halfway through the year, we get notified by Johns through your occupancy permits, and then we will prorate you and bill you through the end of the year and then add it on the tax bill. The Capital Outlay Fund, our resources have come in. That's landfill siting. We did receive the FEMA grant this year, the assistance to firefighters, and that grant funded 90% of the diesel exhaust that was put in I believe it was March or April. So we received the $192,000 in August that covered the 90% of the grant. Everything as far as budget has been either started, completed. I did put a list there if you wanted to read that and see everything that has gone on. There will be a few projects that did not get done in 2024 that will be coming forward as a recommended budget amendment next month. And then I just touched basically on the enterprise fleet program. The last couple months of the year 2024, there was one vehicle placed in service through the Public Works Department. Some of the squads and then also utilities received their vehicles in 2025, but through November, DPW did have one vehicle, and so you'll see some transitional budgetary amendments coming forward, and so just to align the budget versus actual and how the program is going to look on the books going forward, and CLA is helping the auditors. Equipment replacement fund, that again, landfill siting, that's running roughly 3% above budget. Fire department and DPW sold vehicles and equipment, which comprised of, I believe, $12,000 roughly resources. All of the vehicles and equipment have been purchased. The only thing rolling forward is a little bit of equipment for the Public Works front-end loader that will be coming forward. Street Improvement Fund, we allocated roughly $1.4 million of general transportation aid to the Street Improvement Fund. The work is pretty much been completed. The final pay-up was paid in December, but you'll see that this was the first year in the last, I believe, 5 years that we actually allocated some property tax levy to the Street Improvement Fund, so that will be a conversation going forward. We did do it again in 2025. Capital Improvement Fund, that's got a large fund balance due to the borrowings that we did in 2023. Those borrowings comprised of the DPW expansion and then also some capital projects. We accumulated roughly $220,000 in interest on those two bonds. We received a $50,000 donation from Saludo that funded part of the flooring project at Kayla's Playground. And then again, listed the ongoing projects that I believe, looking at these, all of them are rolling into 2025, and then there is some additional projects on the books for 20. Impact fees, you can see that we were well over budget towards the beginning of the year. Now we're under budget. Again, just goes hand in hand with license or with permits. Not as much construction as we anticipated to be. Some of those larger developments that are either being talked about in the works have been slightly delayed, and so it looks like those will be moving into 2025. So that is the main reason for the shortage in impact fees. The other thing that I did want to point out in that fund, though, is there was that large refund of $128,000 that was reported. And that being said, it was this whole page will look different in December because I did some adjusting entries to make it, for me, it makes it cleaner. It was, that large refund was paid out of revenue instead of expense, and so it looks like our revenues are shorter what they really are. So I cleaned that up in December, so you'll see the revenues, it's higher than what it really should be. There's no activity in the utility development fund, self-insurance fund. The claims and the resources are pretty even. I think we're only at a $30,000 net income through November. And then the retiree health fund is at 101% vesting, or that word. Funded, but it's just, I thought there was another word for it, but we're over 100% funded in the OPEB fund right now. So I also have Milliman working on the 2024 actuarial report as we speak. So I will bring that forward. So all in all, 30 minutes later, financial report is done. I can answer any questions. If there's anything you guys want to see moving forward, I know Alderman Pecorelli had mentioned in a previous meeting that potentially adding a line or a column in the financials for projected year end. I did have a question on that. I was going to try and do that for this one, but is that something that you see, or I could do maybe come like June-ish? I just don't know how doing a projected in like February is going to really be beneficial. I start running it around June, July.
Yeah, I think if you just start getting a projection, and it doesn't have to roll forward technically every month, you can do it quarterly, but it just gives an idea of like where right now it can give an idea of where we're trending.
Yeah.
But not everything's all equal amount, right, divided by 12, so it gives a better picture of like how we're trending.
And the way that these have been set up in the past, I have been a little concerned about the year-to-date budget column because of the, I know that the trend is in the system, it calculates that for us, and the trend is, over the last 5 years, but it doesn't look correct when you have, quarterly revenues or expenditures that only happen once a year, and so I see what you're saying. So yes, I can do that.
Question.
A little misleading.
Go ahead.
TID 5, everybody's favorite TID.
You're asking my
Cringing
question.
as
You're
you were
asking my
already.
question, John.
You're taking my thunder, but go for it.
Okay, payment and lieu of tax, what's going on there? Yeah.
So you're looking at November. And again, this is an entry that I had to do. So it's under miscellaneous revenue. So miscellaneous revenue is the pilot payment that they pay and the shortfall. On the December statement, you'll see that I did an entry to fix it. So the pilot payment will be under payment in lieu of taxes. Miscellaneous revenue will be the shortfall payment. But they are all paid up through the 2020
And
for
what's the
financial.
professional services? That's we have a budget.
That would be all the legal fees that we have incurred with the negotiation back and forth and going back and forth with them about the shortfall payment. And that is something that is in the works between city attorney and their attorneys on repaying the city back legal fees. But yes, that is what that is.
Okay. And I saw somewhere that we're leasing fleet vehicles now.
Yes.
When did that start?
Last year.
Yeah, I think contracts were signed like July-ish, but we didn't take our first vehicle in until the end of October.
And they're not like a true lease.
No.
Correct? It's like
Right. It's
yeah,
like
cause
a
I,
loan.
because it was one of the first things I was on when I was on council, and I kept looking at it going, this doesn't look like a real. Like
It's a municipal fleet program
Yeah.
that they have with multiple municipalities around here. Oak Creek being one of them, I believe, because I had been in contact with Oak Creek quite a bit about the financials, how they book it, how it's running for them.
I know that the several people from the PD as well as the mayor reached out to others. One of them was Germantown, was it?
The
Or
PD did.
Menominee Falls, maybe, where they're really interested in their feedback because apparently they're kind of everything they do is top notch. So from a PD standpoint, so
Well,
they
just-
were happy with it.
Just
They
kind of surprised to see that because I don't recall that being run by the finance.
It wasn't, and I think it was something that we discussed after the fact due to timing and all of that, but yes.
It was, I know, noted somewhere, it was done beforehand or whatever, but
No, it wasn't done beforehand, but I know that it was.
It was a
brought up
topic
after-
of
yeah.
conversation.
Because those are normally the kind of topics that we look at.
Oh, I 100% agree, and I even specifically remember Alderman Pecorelli asking, did this get run by finance? Fortunately, it didn't because of, like I said, the timing issue of that, but yes.
I think this was like my second meeting or something
Yeah,
like that,
it was,
right?
yeah.
Something like that.
But I appreciate that feedback, John, because I think you'll notice that on the agenda, I have, a ton of future items, and that's because if I don't put it on here, I'm not holding myself accountable and responsible. So if there's anything that you want to see on here or something that you think should go forward that I may miss or may have missed, then let me know so I can remember that for future. So, if the financials are done, then honestly, motion to
Yeah.
recommend those.
typically the action would be a motion to accept and recommend them forward to the council for their.
I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second on the interim financial statements for October, November 20. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of that recommendation, council?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you much. We're looking for the preliminary year ends and see how that looks as we turn.
How is the reconciliation project coming along? Bank reconciliation?
I can touch on that now if you'd like. Otherwise, I was going to bring forward a whole thing next month, but it's going slower than they projected. I think we projected roughly, or I should say the auditors projected it would be about 16 to about 40 hours, I believe, of work. And as they started, they ran into a ton of challenges. Challenges with the internal process itself, challenges on who handles what, and just nothing is accelerated, unfortunately. It's all worked out of spreadsheets, and you try and segregate duties to keep that segregation of duties and internal controls under wraps. However, one person was reconciling the bank statement to the cash receiving module, then giving that information over to another person who had their own spreadsheet that they were working on, and trying to reconcile that then to the general ledger. And there was just a lot of things that had been missed. There was a lot of mismanagement, we'll say, or no management, period. So there was that 3-year window that it just basically had to start back from 2021 to 2024, find as much of either a discrepancy or just missed information, find out where it should be allocated to, and came up with some final journal entries to clean up 21, 22, 23. And then as they dove into 2024, again, the major challenges of you have 40 plus funds all in one pooled cash account with thousands of daily transactions that haven't really been reconciled 4 years ago, trying to reconcile that to the tax fund. So ultimately, it's just taken them a lot longer. They do have a few additional hands helping now because our timeline is shorter this year than what we have done in the past. We really want to get this audit done by June 30th, if not sooner. So
Would be good.
we just had preliminary field work last week. They were in the office. The auditors were here Monday through Wednesday. Tom and I are, working every day on providing them their information they need. They're coming back in March to do some additional field work with some finalization, hopefully in April, so that they can get everything they need done. The only transition and change that I will talk about next meeting is also now the change with ClearGov and their auditing program and how that's going to look in the creation of the act for this year. So. Okay.
All right, next item is budget amendments for numbered projects. And I think you have a cover sheet on that in the packets here.
Correct. Yeah, I have a memo here. So attached is a preliminary, or I shouldn't say, this is the first of 2 budget encumbrance memos that I plan to bring forward. About 3 weeks ago, I reached out to all department heads and had them go through all the purchase orders that they have outstanding and open, and get back to me to let me know which ones I can liquidate and which ones are still ongoing and need to be carried forward into 2025 as long as there's resources available. So this list here is the encumbrances and purchase orders that need to be rolled into 2025 based on feedback from the department heads. I did liquidate the ones that they had said that I could liquidate. Total amount is 1.7 million roughly for capital improvement fund, 198,000 for the capital outlay fund, and then the general fund encumbrances. There is one that I want to note that should not be on this list because I only copied it on here. So about halfway down your page, it's PO number 75324 for US Bank. And it's for the $525, the air filter. So if you want to cross that one off, that one liquidated, does not need to be paid forward. So the final new amount for the general fund is $139,135 and 47 cents. Unless you have any questions on those, I did go through, I double checked, we have enough resources to cover all of these, so there's no impact to the 2025 budget. And we would just need a recommended approval to carry these forward. There is, like I said, I didn't get a chance to meet with the Department of Public Works in time, so there will be another one of these coming forward to the next meeting for his projects.
The Ide Bailey one on here under general and under capital, just because it's split. Is that
What's that?
the one that's the Ide Bailey for the office 65 and all that? Is it split across multiple funds just because that's how we account for where things are charged?
Correct.
Okay, so it's the same thing. It's just split.
Yep.
So there'll be a phase 1 and phase 2 that the council, we're asking the council to move on these encumbrances?
Correct. Like I said, I will bring another one forward identical to this for the Public Works Department and the Engineering Department. I just didn't get an answer back from them in time.
So the second last one, the last two on here, one's got a 2020 year on it, and the other one's got a 2023. Are those carry forward from those years, or is there something? The dates in the second column.
Oh, yeah, so those are, I mean, that's the date that the purchase order was created. So, for example, that one for 2020, we entered into a contract with Grafe to do design work for the South 116th Street Trail project back in 2020. And as they've continued to do work, we've just continued to carry forward.
Okay.
And
So that's that's the date of the original creation of the purchase order, not
Correct.
of the line item on the purchase order.
you got it.
Okay, I got it. All right. Thank you.
Yep, and all the change orders and all that even like
Mhm.
were just recently
Yep.
approved, that's all included.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments here?
The only other thing I guess I will note, I can see, if you look, and I swore I reviewed this. First page at the bottom, the last you see how it says 25, department computer upgrades 26. Computer upgrades is, if you go on to the next page, you can see it when I dragged it down, it just kept adding the years instead of keeping it the same 2024 year. So I will update that. They all should
They're
just
not
say.
funding future years?
No. So I will change that.
I do have questions, but wait too, and but one of the things that popped into my head, and this isn't necessarily has anything to do with this, but more addressing potentially how we can address something. So I did a revenue comparison between us and Oak Creek. We're relatively the same. And our year-to-year shared revenue that we get from the state is about half of what Oak Creek is getting. So my question is, how do we is there a way to fix that? And how do we,
We can talk later about that.
Okay.
And I remember seeing an email about it.
Mhm.
But a lot of it is the fact that they have a water utility, so they get a
Okay.
huge increase for that too. But
Okay.
it's not just based on
Right.
population.
Right. Well, I figured, but also see what we can do.
All right, anything else on encumbrances? Pretty straightforward, it's stuff that's been all approved and previous, working its way through the fiscal year. Take I think, a motion here and council their action.
I'll make the motion. Second.
A motion and a second regarding the 2024 budget encumbrance laid out in the memo. Or
With the change.
with the changes noted. Any further comments or discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That recommendation will be made. All right, moving on. Sanitary sewer. Fees typically early done early part of the year so that they can go out with first quarter invoice. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, so the background is pretty self-explanatory. The analysis that was performed is usually done by taking the cost recovery procedures manual from MMSD and putting it into the spreadsheet, does all of its quirky calculations for us and gives us a final volumetric charge rate, connection charge that's fixed from MMSD, a charge for hazardous waste, and then Franklin's local charge. And so as you can see on the diagram that I put here on the chart, Franklin's charge, their rate went down 2.19%. And the reason for that is because we're not charging as much locally due to the amount of our budget. So our expenses to the cost that MMSD provides services for us. That percentage is roughly 50%, so that's the charge that we are passing on to users. However, all of the other charges are set by MMSD. So you can see the volumetric charge went up. The connection charge went up a lot. They didn't have much of an explanation for me except that it just went up. And that's what they emailed to me, at year-end 2024. So it pretty much doubled, or almost doubled. Our hazardous waste charge did go down, which provided a total MMSD charge of $209.10 for the average residential user. That is different for a duplex user. They have a double metro charge. Their connection charge is the same, and their hazardous waste charge is double. So the duplex user is not exactly double the single user because they're just charged the same connection charge as a residential user, but the total annual charge roughly $319 average, with a quarterly residential billing of about $80, which is a 7% increase. Again, you can see the Franklin charge went down, but the main bump for the 7% increase in sewer rates is because of the increase in MMSD charges.
So what's our avenue to get a real explanation of the fixed connection charge? Because not getting an answer isn't, they're not like a private entity.
No, I can reach back out to them.
All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, it should be available.
Yeah, what's driving it, right? And I could see maybe if their variable went one way and the fixed went the other way, their rates are off, right? And so they're like, hey, we had too much on the variable side, not enough on the fixed side, just what it costs to have a person, right? But that doesn't really seem to be what happened there. So
I will get that and come back with that information.
Do we know at this stage if our current user fees will be enough to cover operational and capital expenses, or will a increase be necessary?
Increase.
And then another question. How will future special assessments impact?
Sewer rates right now, special assessments.
Yeah, so we're not special assessing for the super fund, right? But what about if we have to? I guess it's probably more specific to water at this stage, but
Well, anytime you special assess, charges get paid in. That's but what rate that looks like, it all depends.
right.
We do have a development does services that we allocate for projects that are being at some point we don't have any outstanding special assessment sewer fund right now. The only liability is the debt service that lives, but we do that one because we are doing a special assessment for the sewer.
Right. So that for concerns, some of the people
Yes.
buy the DPW utilities. So just that's kind of was on my mind more as a global, but that.
Anything else? Comments, questions?
So I guess my question would be, and again, I will go back to MMSD, try and get some more clarification on the connection charge. It's in their manual. I don't know if they'll change it, but if this is what it is, we could either move forward with recommending this to council, or we do have next month technically. But it's going to really be pushing to get out those utility.
This should be the same against, or to all municipalities within the county.
No,
The connection?
not 100%.
I don't know. Why would it be different?
That might be another question just to answer.
Yeah,
you know?
now that you say that, though, it would make sense that it's the same.
Yes. at
For
least the
anybody that
connection
hooks
charge.
up.
But they're obviously doing something or rearranging county.
Or somebody dropped off or something and they have to spread costs over less people or something? Or they changed? It just seems like a big jump not to have an explanation.
Yeah, seems like a reallocation.
Correct.
Again, I'm making that presumption. That's Franklin Creek or yeah, or any other municipality. My thought might be just go ahead and submit the recommendation, and then we could ask Danielle to circle back with us next time and get the
And I should have an answer, obviously. I can have an answer for the council, too.
yeah,
which-
because they may want. I mean, they may
yeah.
be prudent for them to know it and voting on it, but I think it would make sense to push this forward. Typically bumps up a little bit historically.
Yeah, I move that we approve the encumbrances subject to clarification of the connection charge.
Okay, everybody got that? John's making it subject to further understanding what that. So, and again, we're not approving this final, that's done by the council, but at least it'll keep this moving in time. And you'll have that information. But I'd like you to please kind of just circle back for the members here at the next meeting and have that backfill as well. Thank you. Next up,
You didn't vote
oh,
on
I'm
the-
sorry.
We got a second, and we need a vote.
Oh, we got motion and second. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That'll get forward to the council as noted that stipulation. All right, now we want to talk about tax collection process. Kind of what we've seen here, Danielle, if you read through this, is made some notations, and I guess, why don't you go ahead and
Yeah. So I could
give us
just
the
briefly,
highlights.
yep, I'll talk about it. I wanted to put this out there because I'm sure as older people and residents, you've heard a lot of concerns, complaints, maybe compliments about how the tax process went this year, how the tax assessment process went this year, and maybe you have some recommendations moving forward. So if you read this, I'll just highlight, I think I came up with 4 major issues that I recognize through the tax process of creating the tax bills, basically from the time the budget was created until now. So obviously we had the concern about assessments. We had an assessor come in later in the year. They were not able to provide timely assessments due to challenges and constraints that they had, which caused an issue with tax calculation. It caused an issue with Board of Review being late. And then also knowledge to the residents about what their tax bill may look like due to the increase in assessment. That there was a large increase in land value, there was an increase in improvements, and I know most of that plays into the market, manuals and processes that the assessors have to follow, but the communication to the residents, as much as we tried to do it, there was obviously some people that were concerned. So the assessment piece was a huge challenge and an issue, and it still is ongoing as we have people calling, many people calling, and either complaining, wanting to speak to the assessor, wanting to know why their taxes are so high, why is their assessment so high. And so just the finance department, treasury department, and the assessor's office bombarded this last 2.5 months. The increase in taxes has been another issue. Essentially, the budget proposed an increase in levy that proposed a potential 2.9 average increase on the tax bill for residents. It obviously sways one way or the other based on the increase in assessed value. But I saw that many residents received obviously a higher increase due to the increase in their assessment or due to the referendums based on what school district they're in. So that was a challenge. Received many phone calls on that, which ended up unfortunately just being mostly a transfer right to the assessor because it was more about their assessment so high and why their tax bill was high. However, I did want to point out that when we finally got the statement of assessment in December, and I mean got it in December, but I say tax bills had to be generated by December 16th, and I was calling the Department of Revenue so many times to try and get them to finalize that statement of assessment for me so I can get tax bills calculated by Friday, because the mailing company was like, if you don't get them to us by Friday, we cannot get these out for you by Monday. It was just a hassle, but we got it, and then actually our assessed value came in higher than what we projected in the budget, so the overall average tax increase that the average resident would see was only, I believe, like 1.3%. So that is a plus. But again, we still had the concerns of my assessment was higher than the average, so then my tax bill was higher than the average. So trying to help residents realize that when we put that number out there, that it is just an average, and we'd be happy to, help move forward in calculating things for you and all that. But there was just that, the assessment piece and the tax piece that went hand in hand with a lot of.
I think there's a true lack of understanding too by people. Yeah. I mean, there was definitely some significant misunderstanding. I know I've even had conversations with people. They've complained about their tax bill increasing, and the city, what's the city taking? And I've said, for every tax dollar, we are taking less than a quarter. And I asked them to look at their detailed itemized bill and see, because you can compare the year prior and the current year and see where the major increases in the referendums.
The Franklin Public Schools is going to drop because they will pay off their previous referendum with this tax year. So next year is only the new referendum mill rate. So I don't know
So
what.
not both.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
this year was another thing that we had a lot of calls on was, why is my tax bill so high? Why is the Franklin Public School referendum say that the year end is 2025? And my answer to that is, well, unfortunately, that's just certified levy that I get from the district, and those are the years that they had on there, and that's what I have to transfer into the, but, and then the other thing was,
While you think about that, I have taken opportunities. One of them is with the senior luncheon group to inform them of why they see the changes. Also, I had provided information to them about contacting the assessor and how the next 2 years will be maintenance years, and they are very much in line to make sure that all the information is correct, so that way the tax bills are as accurate as possible. So, you know, they had poor information and missing information. So you know, obviously garbage in, garbage out. So I really stressed that you want to, as a homeowner, make sure that what they have for information is correct. And they won't know that if you don't contact them.
Yeah. If I could add one thing to that, I had to take a call, Chief, and I'll brief afterwards. One of the things that I think when I've met with many citizens, including when the taxes were getting paid, I stood in the hallway by the pie chart and I said, "Hey, I'm your mayor. If anybody's got any questions," you talk about getting thrown in the lion's pit, you know. But you'd be surprised on when their tax bill, I'm like, yeah, lower left corner, there's your 2 school referendum, and I think the messaging or lack thereof on those 2, like, yes, it already started. There's one and the other one, but both of them said 2025. So it didn't say when one expires and how long one continues. So we're working on that too, about proper messaging, because that, you know, as we all know, 44% of your tax bill goes to the school.
Right.
And I pointed to Jason Messelman, but the thing is that once that information was there, it was a little bit of exhale, and then it's like, oh, so yeah, so like, I mean, the last one I met with 2 days ago was a $1,200 tax increase. Comes in, pitchforks and ready to fight, and then it was like, oh, $880 going to the school increase for referendums. Oh, now it was, oh, okay. So I think that big oh, we have to deal with somehow to get that messaging out there. And it passed, the referendum passed strong, but you know, when does the middle school referendum fall off? Exactly. Then when does this one fall off? Exactly, with an explanation. And I think that's going to save a lot of us in this room some heartache with added, you know, a tax that helps us.
Middle school falls off this year, and the new one that passed 20 years.
Right. Now, so are you sure about the middle school one that falls on 2020? I thought it was 5 more years.
Nope. They've defeased a lot of the debt previously leading up to it, and that's why they went to referendum this year or last year, so that way they don't have the roller coaster effect of all of a sudden all debt services fall off, and then then everyone's property taxes drop, and that makes it really hard to come back and say, "Hey, can you spot me $5?" That's what you try and like keep it as stable as possible. The problem is that their ask was so large that it was a huge bump. So next year there will be a lot of like smiles and joy because, oh, my taxes went down.
No,
So-
it won't be. I never.
But it will be bumped, and
Right.
I think I think from their initial projection, the initial was like 2.25. That was what the first ask was going to be because they were going to demolish Countrydale and relocate it further south.
So just to bring this in, 'cause I know it's not agenda, well, kind of is. So is this the last year for that middle school? So 2025, this is the last year, or is? Yeah, we're going to get clarification on that because that's important to get that messaging out there for that too.
But what we were going, that was my other thing that I wanted to say was people were confused about why we just voted on a referendum and it's already on my tax bill. So that was one of the other challenges that we received. But to the mayor's point, again, you weren't in here when I just stated that you're a Franklin resident, you saw 2 referendums ending this year and there was a lot of questioning about that. And my response was, unfortunately, that's a certified levy that I get from the school district that I can't change those dates even though I know that they're wrong. So unfortunately, we just have to make sure and verify that the school districts put the correct information on there before passing it off so that we can then pass it on. Dennis.
Yeah, I need to exit. We've got a commitment downtown, so I'm going to turn it over to John for the discussion. But that letter that goes out that kind of talks about all the jurisdictions, you know, when there's this large of school district referendums going through, we should probably have a separate paragraph or an addendum letter, you know, maybe written or prepared by the school district or whatever, kind of laying that out. You know, so there's some additional information in there. And
We're gonna lay that out in the next newsletter. There will be, for sure.
Okay,
Here, I mean, we're already too late for the next one.
Right.
No, but
We
next
already
year we
provided
can.
one.
but I'm just saying, going forward, at least when there's those larger size changes. Because if
Big
people would
change.
have gotten directed to their lower left-hand corner, they would say, okay, this is where the bulk of this is going. Now I can take the rest and divide it up by my 25 cents to the city and,
Right.
you know, 40 for operations of the school or, you know, county.
ATC.
Right.
Well, and I think people also have a misconception that the city
Oh, yeah.
is handling the school stuff too,
yeah.
because
Because
they will.
That's
yeah.
where the check says paid to the order of.
Yes,
The
exactly.
City of Franklin,
Yep.
so therefore, must be that.
Oh, I,
Yeah,
This way.
exactly.
plenty of abuse.
All right.
I still got the welts.
Thank you,
So,
everybody.
Thank you.
I've got the next meeting date, so I will talk to you then.
All right.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, was there the same sort of where you had the dual referendums for OCF as well? Because I think that they're still paying off 2 of theirs.
There was 2 referendums for them, but they had the correct dates.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was just Franklin that we had the issue with.
Live and learn, right?
So the third issue that I recognized was the issue with lottery credits. There was many residents calling and complaining that they were either not receiving the lottery credits, wanted to know why they weren't receiving it. So again, I think it's just either a miscommunication, lack of communication. I had a very heated discussion with one resident and essentially just asked him, from your perspective, what more can the city of Franklin do?
Right.
We provide information in the newsletter. We provide it in your bill as it comes in. We put it on the website. I even had Lisa put, now that they offer the lottery credit online as of last year, that you can apply right online. Don't have to come in City Hall anymore and do it. So that link is right on the homepage. You don't even have to search for it in the website. It's right on the homepage. When residents come in, we're asking them as they pay. If we see that they don't have it on their tax bill, we ask them if they're eligible. I'm like, so from your perspective, if you are a resident that is sitting at home and you pay your tax bill online, what more can I do to provide you that knowledge before you start telling me that we are now frauding you out of 12 years that you've lived here and not received lottery credit? If I had any other recommendations, anybody please speak up, or residents please speak up, because I feel that the city does the best that we can to acknowledge and inform residents about the lottery credit. So I wanted that to be addressed in this so that you can see that not only is the online portal become a help to the city. Now we have, we had 97 applications online for 2024, which dramatically increased our numbers here. You can see it was almost 200 new lottery credit claimants in 2024 from 2023. That's 276 more lottery credit applicants that we have received and that we paid, but also as older people, you guys have also seen on the vendor accounts payable sheets that you get at the council meeting, you'll see that we have given out a ton of refunds this year, not just refunds because people overpaid, but because a lot of people paid their taxes online, paid by e-check, or maybe Treasury missed asking them, but a large portion of our refunds this year was lottery credit refunds. We're trying to make sure that we're minimizing those the best way that we can. Again, we can ask as people come in, but if those residents aren't here, we can't physically ask them, and just making sure that we're continuing to get the word out there. I did put a huge stop sign in front of the, because it was just on the board, people weren't seeing it. So I said, if people are standing in line, then they can see that big pink sheet right in front of them to remind them to ask as they get up to the window. And I know that honestly, I didn't have one complaint about that sign. So I can only hope that has helped.
On the online portal, when you go to pay, is it somewhere in that path that says that you have it there as well?
We don't, and I think that I can probably bring that up as a recommendation because, like I noted, last year was late 2023 is the first year that we transitioned from GCS to the countywide portal.
Yeah.
We had experienced a lot of challenges last year, and the mayor could probably touch on that. There was people speaking at the ICC meetings monthly. We had monthly, or actually for a while they were bi-weekly meetings, all the county treasurers and municipal treasurers with LandNav to discuss issues and challenges. And so it's really come a long way from last year's tax season to this year's tax season.
Dealing with the county treasurer, David Cullen, he was very accessible, in my opinion, very open
His
to.
team, yeah, I've never dealt with him on his, but
Okay. Well, him and his team,
his
he would
assistant,
appear.
his assistant is extremely helpful, Lena.
Yep.
But as these things come up, we do bring forward just minor tweaks, asking them if they can do that. So absolutely, I don't see why they shouldn't be able to.
This is a state, just to clarify, right, that this is a state, it's not a city of Franklin thing.
Correct.
Or Milwaukee County
This
thing.
is
This
our
is
Correct, but they
correct.
don't.
We just are the local conduit that this.
We're the first line of fire, really, and so, and that's what I was gonna say too is, and this is something I had stressed during the senior luncheon. You have to ensure as a homeowner, you are doing your due diligence to make sure that you're reviewing these documents. I mean, many of them had, the people that had complained, many of them were very much expressing ignorance in terms of the process, and the mayor's saying, did you turn it over? Because there's a whole process piece on the other side. So, I mean, at some point, I think it's every homeowner has a responsibility, or every resident taxpayer has a responsibility to review that. And again, you know, you're only as good as the information that you have. If it's near impossible for the city to, I mean, we can't just reach out to every single person. So I think that that anger you're experiencing from residents probably comes more from lack of.
It's just sticker shock at the final line.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, it's their responsibility, and they're just looking for somebody to be angry with, because, gosh, you don't want to be angry with yourself, right?
Yeah, so moving forward, like I said, any recommendations you may have on how we can reach out to residents more than we already are, please let me know. But I know it's clear that, you know, having the portal online has helped tremendously as far as allowing residents the avenue to apply for the credit and have it added to the tax bill. So that was the third challenge that we experienced. And then the fourth one is very minor, but I just wanted to bring it up, and I noted it in here, is the congestion of City Hall during tax season and pushing this online avenue for payment of taxes and permit fees, and that. Doing that, it's going to take time, but I think doing that will alleviate a lot of headache for the Treasury Department. It'll alleviate congestion in the City Hall, and it is way more convenient, that I believe, on the residents to be able to pay your bill online versus driving to City Hall to either drop off a check, stand in line for a half hour, 45 an hour. When if you're just wanting to drop off your check and get a receipt, well, you could pay $1.50 in a matter of 20 seconds and pay your bill online.
And that's
There's
it,
just
$1.50. Because
for
that was a
an
big
e-check.
question.
Yeah, so I wrote down what the fees are, but the majority, I mean, you can see out of 13,000 residents, I didn't get how many paid through December. I wanted to get that, but 813 users paid online, which is only 53 more than from 2017. So the amount of people that are moving to the online portal and paying their taxes online is very minuscule. So pushing that more, I think, will be helpful.
So I've been through, not on taxes, but I've been through moving people to electronic right before on things. So one of the questions I have is, what's the population that you can really get there? Because if I get an escrow check from my bank, if I don't have an avenue to come in through the online, I got to take this route. And so if the majority, if we have a lot of residents that are sitting there getting that, if that's 60 or 70, 80%, the most we can get to right now with the way the online is 20%, right? So like, if we have an idea of like what is that amount, and because if I can't go in, if I gotta take, if I don't have an avenue to come in electronically, or if I'm escrowed through somebody else, then that's a problem.
So again, obviously this is something that we have now another almost year to discuss, but I just wanted it on the forefront because I have been looking at, I've started to gather the data from the last couple of years, like how many people are, doing escrow, how many people are providing their payments online, very minimal use some sort of credit card due to the fee that it is, but how many people use their debit card, how many people, can deliver a check, how many people use the Dropbox. So getting some of that data over the last couple of years, I want to bring forward maybe closer to next tax season. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Can't reach everybody if everybody's already doing some sort of avenue.
Because if I mean, I get escrowed right now, and I would instantly take an online option if one was available. So,
and to that end, I have escrow, and they just pay automatically to the city. So
yeah, different banks
right.
have that set up differently. So some cut the check to you, some cut the check to Go Direct. Yep.
And we do. I mean, we use GovTech, and they're incredible for us too. So I guess I don't mind the escrow portion of it because we do get online payments through escrow, and we get checks that come in that we have to enter. But like I said, for those residents that still want to come in and hand you their check, what other option can we give them? We can give them the online option, but trying to relay the convenience portion to them. Like I said, you're driving here, you're standing in line, you're whatever you could have sat at home and typed in your information and paid $1.50. And
well, it comes down to like how much is your time worth?
Ultimately, and that's what I'm saying, the convenience, how much is your time worth? If it's, just I want to physically hand this to somebody, I don't want to ex-nay that completely. But
so do we know how many people use the Dropbox? Percentage that use the Dropbox?
I can figure that out because girls,
because that might be another push because it gets rid of the line, right?
Right.
It doesn't get rid of the
work,
someone's got
but
to
it's
process
still
it. But,
right.
Yeah.
But the process is easier without having a line going all the way around the building or what have you.
Would we need,
like
could we
this.
save on a temporary cashier? Could we save,
It moved very well though, because I'm one of those dinosaurs that pays with a check, waits in line, gets my hand receipt, covet it,
You
run out to my car. But I'm saying
I did that this year, so yes.
I love it, and I talk to citizens. I'm like, I'd love to hear blah blah blah, but it went smooth. I mean, yeah, I was in the right line, and but I think you had what 3 or 4 working the window.
3 because we only have 3 computers, but
it was moving. I mean, it was
everybody's
like,
got a computer, so
I didn't
we
even.
needed more.
I came in here in the middle of one of the days. I didn't even have to wait in line more than a minute. I think there was like 2 people in front of me. That was it.
It moved fast. I observed them numerous times being very friendly with people. I mean, it was an A-team.
Absolutely, I have a very good team, but like I said, I think it's just that first couple of weeks that before December 31st, when everybody wants to get their taxes paid, that's where the congestion is. The other thing, and it's probably minute, but the other thing is the amount of money that we're spending every time we print a resident. Like I said, the time that it's taking our people to get up, go to the counter, go back. We only have temporary cashiers for 2 weeks out of the whole year, 3 weeks maybe. So giving them that ability to process payments without having the headache of getting back up and all of that, I think is very beneficial.
I'll tell you, this is not going to be a popular opinion, but I know you say that, it's only $1.50, it's only $1.50, but to some people, if it's a penny, they're not gonna do it, because if they come here, it's free.
Right.
But
I
I
mean, it
100%
does come
understand.
down to how much is your time worth.
But
Well, and your
to,
gas.
to compensate for that, we could charge an internal processing fee. You know how we, charge for like copies and travel, like, you're gonna come in, we're also gonna charge you $1.50, or like level the playing field, because if there's a fee to do it in person, to
Right.
pay for personnel costs and paper and ink and
People
whatnot,
aren't gonna wanna do that.
then if that playing field is level, I bet you would see, not everybody, but I bet you would see a noticeable jump of people, because I'm telling you, it sounds nonsensical, but there's a large swath of people that if there's a fee, they're not gonna do it. They're going to come in person because they're not gonna pay that fee.
Retired.
Bam, bam, bam.
Well, and that was
People
my other
stand in
suggestion, was we charge a fee
I love
to
free.
process,
And I said it won't be a popular
small
opinion,
refund.
You should run on that platform.
Right.
Should I?
Added fee at the.
Well, no, but I guess
Bring your dollar.
my thought process is more along the lines of, I wouldn't come into the city unless it's convenient for me, like I'm already there, or I had something that I wanted to talk about, a concern on my tax bill, and I'm thinking that I can go and talk to him. So I was curious, like, was an overwhelming amount of people that were paying in person also bringing up concerns, or are they just, just there because this is how they've always done it?
Always
I
done.
think
Can't
it, I
yell
think,
at anybody online.
yeah. And to that
Right,
point,
right,
I will
exactly.
say that the majority, a large majority is, I always come in and pay my tax bill. I know the girls received additional complaints, grief about, their assessments or their tax bill going up or what have you. Probably a little bit more than normal, but I would say it's just people that enjoy, but come in and pay their tax bill because that's how they've always done it.
Right.
They want a receipt due to tax reasons or whatever.
Which you can easily print off your computer too, or take a.
And I will say, from the perspective of working at another municipality previously, we did not offer free receipts to residents. The only way that we offered receipts to residents, because you can go look it up yourself online, was if you paid by check, you had to have a self-addressed envelope with a stamp on it in the envelope, and we would mail you a receipt back. But if you came in and paid your tax bill online, if we were feeling generous that day or somebody asked, we would typically, okay. But that was not our process. It was, your receipt is viewable online. So, know that we wouldn't be the only one pushing that way.
Right.
Okay, are we pretty well beat that one to death, huh?
You think?
Well, I mean, I think it's good though to kind of review what went well and more importantly what didn't, and how we can try to mitigate that in the future. Yes.
Okay, item A, future agenda items.
Yep, so like I said, I just started, it may be a little cumbersome, but I decided to put, as I was going through previous years of agenda items, seeing what is applicable, what could be put on there coming forward, and like I said, then it holds me accountable. Make sure that these things do come forward. So if there's anything that you can think of off the top of your head now, if not, just send me a quick email with something that you want to see in a future agenda. But for sure, I will say that December financials, preliminary results, audit update, the final 2024 encumbrances. So A, D, F, I, J will for sure be coming March.
We used to look at capital expenditures.
Do you mean like the capital improvement program and like some projects coming up? Okay. Okay. I'll add that.
Okay, anything else on future agenda items? Next meeting is Tuesday, March 25th, 2025 at 6 o'clock. Election room. Yeah, entertain a motion for adjournment. So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried.